My name is Taylor Rose. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, this is my writing challenge, 100K in 100 days, where I'm trying to write 100,000 words in 100 days. Hopefully. There have been some hiccups thus far in the challenge. Namely, I went out of town for 5 days and was not in a position to write or record anything, which I decided to give myself some grace and just skip that week pretty much and just continue. You can see in my little tracker what I'm trying to say. I just skipped the time I was out of town and then started over. But I'm not really sure if it's what I had, but apparently after I left, some family members were diagnosed with strep throat. So I ended up being really sick, sore throat, snot everywhere for around 3.5 days. I came back after I was sick, pretty strong, and got over 1,000 words 2 days in a row. Unfortunately, Wednesday, I started out pretty strong. I got 830 words. But towards the end of the day, I started having my jaw will start hurting, and then I have a migraine. It kind of took me out that afternoon. All of Thursday, I was in bed with a heating pad just wrapped around my face. And then I came back on Friday and managed to get 803 words. So, not terrible. It's Saturday. I'm back. We will see what I can get accomplished tonight. While I was in bed, I did try continuing reading the current book I'm on, Crier's War. And I don't know what it is about the book that reading it just felt like an eternity. Maybe it's because I wasn't feeling well. It was just so hard to focus on the page. So I ended up restarting my Everand subscription and was listening to the audiobook version, which so far has been a much better experience. I haven't gotten too far. I think maybe two hours in to the audiobook. So far, I really like it. I am questioning their choice to not have two different narrators. It's just one person narrating the whole book. And so far, Ayla and Crier sound identical to my ear. So you do have to stay on top of paying attention to who is supposed to be the POV character. Not that the writing itself is confusing in that regard. It's actually pretty clear. But listening and reading are two totally different experiences. So it could just be me. Instead of recording anything when I wasn't feeling well, I just did some screen recording. So you can see here on Wednesday, I started off on a scene that I had been working on previously. So Tuesday, I had left off at 1,349 words, and I ended up closing off the day with 2179. So that was all in the scene where Finna returns home. Her brother and his partner are there. They're eating lunch. Super exciting. It's supposed to be more internal with her thoughts on family and her position. I think one of the reasons that I only got 830, aside from the fact that I had the beginnings of a migraine, was that maybe half of that word count was actually me going back to what I had previously written, changing things, adding sentences, etc. Which obviously you have to eventually do that when you're writing, but it has always been a weakness of mine to really try and perfect what's on the page before moving on. And obviously, I've never finished a novel draft before. Just a lot of outlines. And you can probably guess why that's the case. So I was out of it Thursday, but Friday I came back, and you can see I started off still in that scene because it was still going. But I realized after writing for a while that I had actually moved on to another scene. Obviously, it's the next one. It wasn't a weird, huge jump or anything, but I am trying to keep scenes. This scene in particular starts off, Svenja returns home. She goes into the main house, finds her family there. They have a conversation, yada, yada, yada. She has her feelings. She decides to leave. So she's leaving the room. And it's supposed to pick up fairly soon afterwards. Her aunt comes to find her in the smaller second building and is basically like, hey, what's up, girl? How are you feeling? Once I realized that, I decided to cut out the part that should be that second scene and move it to the correct document, which is where you can see this 469 word count. That's the previous little synopsis sentence I had written, plus the new prose. And at that point, I was having a really difficult time trying to decide where their conversation should be going, because her aunt is supposed to say something that comes into play the 2 chapters later. And basically someone is reiterating what her aunt said in a completely different tone. And Svenja is supposed to connect the dots there. But since I don't know what this other person's going to be saying, I'm not sure what the aunt is going to be saying, I guess. I have an idea, obviously. For years, the way I've been envisioning this particular run of events, I recently decided isn't going to work. And so what I had envisioned no longer applies. So I'm still countering and trying to re-envision what's going on, which, funnily enough, apparently lots of people actually see little movies in their heads when they're reading or thinking about stuff, and I've come to the conclusion that I don't actually see anything. I just feel like I can sense what's happening, but there's just a black screen between me and what I'm supposed to be seeing, if that makes sense. So this might be a big issue with me trying to write a book. Anyways, so since I was feeling kind of lost on what Rina should be saying to Svenja, I decided to just jump ahead to one of the dream sequences. So I'm not going to give away why, but through the story, Svenja does have dreams from the POV of a separate character. And she's trying to figure out in the rest of the story, who is it, basically? What is this trying to tell me? So I did a rough draft of that scene, and I ended up getting to 444 words. So combined total, I was 803. Not bad, not great. One thing I'm a little unsure of is how detailed to go in with the dreams, because maybe this is spoiler material. Events in the dreams actually happened hundreds of years ago. So obviously the POV is going to be familiar with the scenery and the other people, but I don't intend on naming them for Svenja to know in the dream. But that does leave me with the question of how detailed I want to be on the surroundings. Different culture, completely different time period. I don't think the POV would not consciously be like, oh, this thing, do-do-do. Realistically, if you were from the future and you were seeing through my eyes briefly, I wouldn't be the automobile with 4 wheels and windshield wipers and XYZ. So maybe I'm just overthinking this, but this particular dream, POV is stressed out, stream of consciousness through a disaster. So that one was pretty easy to do. This is just me more thinking of the future dreams. I think I initially planned for 8 of them. That number's shaky. Could go down. We will see. That leaves me here for today, Saturday. I definitely want to focus more on actually zero drafting, just knocking out a rough sketch of what's supposed to be going on. Not focusing on how nice it sounds. Is it painting a great picture? None of that. Which historically has always really hung me up because I guess was afraid people were going to read it. And maybe this comes from being an English major in college. It's like everything you write is immediately being filtered through your classmates and then your professor, who is commenting on your work process instead of your final product. So it is kind of stressful in that environment. And it's kind of always stuck with me. I don't even know who this girl was. So I moved cities between middle school and high school. So I didn't get to go to high school with all of my childhood friends, but some drama ensued that I was privy to through my friends who were still there. And basically, one of the characters in all of this going on was this girl who wrote a book series while she was going to high school there. And I don't know why that's always stuck with me. She knocked it out and got it published. Realistically, that fast of a timeline, she probably didn't have much to change between what she wrote in her final draft. And I will be honest and say I never looked her up to read it. I think it was supposed to be really high fantasy type. That's the impression that I had. So I didn't, like, I liked fantasy, but more low fantasy, soft fantasy. I don't know. Kind of silly to still be thinking about that sort of stuff when you're a full-grown adult. Fingers crossed, I'm aiming for 1,000 words today. If I end up with 1,000 words, that doesn't move my weekly average up very much. It's at 866 words. But that is more than last week when I missed 3 days. If I get 1250 today and tomorrow, I'm almost at 1,000 average. So I think I can do it. Especially if I'm just zero drafting, really rough, knocking it out, not focusing on how beautiful it is. I can do it. I'll be back. You probably see my cat being a distraction back there. 504 words. Ooh, ooh, not bad. Oh, you can see my other cat, Hobbit, being a more quiet menace. 504 words, half of what I need. So I did skip a little bit ahead to chapter 2. All the scenes I've been working on previously were still part of chapter 1, at least according to the 27 chapter outline. I might change that up after getting a rough draft out, but this scene is in chapter 2. So the New Year's blessings have begun, and obviously Svenja, given her religious importance, is the one administering these blessings. Only gotten as far as she is giving these blessings out. Some info sprinkled in here, probably too much telling. After listening to parts of Crier's War today, I realized I'm probably being too stringent on not wanting to have, when really, if I'm doing this from a third person limited, she would have input still, right? Third person, not omniscient. It's not everybody. I'm just trying to have the POV contribute personal thoughts to the prose. Anyways, I can keep it up. A second Pomodoro, a second sprint is all I'm going to need. I will get this scene tied up. I think I know where this scene's going to end. Technically, this is the catalyst, but this scene will end before that. Yeah. And the next scene is going to be the actual, let's do a second sprint. .996 words. Fantastic. I made it. and it is midnight. So I am going to call it at that. I did not finish the scene yet, but I think maybe in another 200 or 300 words I'll be there. So at this point, Svenna has been performing blessings on people when there is a commotion in the distance. Everything ends. She's trying to get home through what is now crowds of people. I'm trying to channel, maybe a little dramatic. When I was in college, what's his name? Shia LaBeouf? I think it was Shia LaBeouf who got super drunk. I think he was on drugs, but he drove a car into East 6th, Dirty 6th, I don't know, in Austin, Texas. And I wasn't there that night, but my friend did make me go the next week. And someone called fake warning just to work people up. So there was another stampede. Obviously not as bad as the first one because there was no car running people over. But yeah, that was a pretty scary experience. I got pushed down a brick wall by the force of people trying to escape. And then the police were super unhelpful. So that was cool. But anyways, I'm feeling better about how things are going. I have hit 10,650 words total so far. Not bad. Obviously I'm behind, but so it goes. My 3-week average so far is 819 words. So 200 less a day than I should have been doing. But that is counting 4 days of zero progress. I will be back with you tomorrow, and I think I am going to, for the next week, try and implement a schedule instead of just sitting down when I feel like it. So I will talk more about that tomorrow. See you next time.